I'm Darlene.
And I'm Melody.
My sources for today's episode came from Murderpedia, Find a Grave, a chapter in a book called Wicked Women of Alabama, Lake Magazine, the Goat Hill History blog, and finally, most of my information came from newspapers.com.
Just a heads up that in today's episode, we discuss the murder of a child, which may not be appropriate for some audiences. You're listening to
Hard Times and True Crimes.
Come on in and get out of the rain. Just leave your umbrella there by the door. I hope you manage to stay dry, 'cause it's been the wettest autumn I've ever seen down here in Elmore County, Alabama. It's 1952 and fast food restaurants are popping up all over the place. I don't know if they'll make it or not. They seem kind of silly if you ask me. And there's been a lot going on around here lately, especially with the young folks. The legendary Hank Williams has moved into a cabin over on Lake Martin. That's right, the hillbilly Shakespeare. He's been here since September. His mama was worried with him drinking and traveling all the time, it was going to take a toll on his health. So she talked him into coming down here for a while. And these teenagers are going crazy. From what I've heard, Elmore County hadn't slowed him down one bit. The sheriff's been out there a time or two for complaints by his neighbors. Between me and you, I don't think the sheriff minds the peace being disturbed as long as it's Hank doing the disturbing. But that's old news now. You know Cora Bell and Gaston Weldon? They live in an old farmhouse down on the edge of the county. Yeah, that's them. The ones that lost their little girl Polly Ann. And she suddenly got sick and passed away the same night their daughter Shirley was born. And I never will forget seeing Gaston in town after that. I don't think I've ever seen a man look more broken-hearted. But with God's help, they found the strength to go on with their lives. They had 2 other children to raise besides, and they adored those little ones. Cora Bell was young when she had them kids, but she was a good mama. Well, get yourself a cup of coffee and we'll listen to what happened next.
I want to introduce you to a little girl named Shirley Diane Weldon. She was a blue-eyed, curly-haired, 2-year-old bouncy little blonde. She lived with her mama, Cora Bell, her daddy, Gaston, and her 8-year-old brother, Orville, in a modest farmhouse in the backwoods of Elmore County. Shirley had a sister named Polly Ann that she unfortunately never had a chance to meet. On the very same day, sadly, in the same hospital where Shirley was born, Cora Bell had just given birth to Shirley, and her 3-year-old daughter was admitted and pronounced dead.
Oh.
Yes, shortly after the birth of Shirley.
How tragic.
Can you imagine?
No.
So she died of a sudden illness. I can't imagine what that must have been like for them. I'm sure they hugged Orville and baby Shirley a little tighter.
Mm-hmm.
On May 1st, 1952, Orville and little Shirley saw their favorite aunt coming up the driveway and went running out to meet her. Earle Dennison may have only technically been related to the Weldons by marriage, but she was family. Earle had been married to Cora Bell's brother, Lem, but sadly, he died just 6 months ago. Not wanting her to feel alone, the Weldon family rallied around Earle, invited her over as much as possible, and reminded her that she was loved. Earle was a widow now at 50 years old.
That's pretty young to be a widow.
It is. She and her husband, Lem, had been married only about 13 years. So, yeah, she got married, on up there, especially for that time.
That's what I was going to say. It sounds like she married late because back then most women were married around like 20 years old, I believe.
Right. So she was past her prime whenever they got married. I want to say she was 40.
Oh, wow. So they would have called her a spinster back then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it must have been a hard blow to have waited so long to find love and then to find it so late in life only to lose it prematurely. Her husband died at the young age of 47. Now, There was a time I wouldn't have thought 47 was so young, but now
Looks a lot younger now,
looks
doesn't
a whole
it?
lot younger.
Yeah.
Earle spent a lot of her time mourning at her husband's graveside. She probably knew in her heart she'd never find love again. Thankfully, though, Aunt Earle still had some bright spots in her life. She had been a nurse for the past 25 years. So that's pretty,
Yeah.
I mean,
She's got a long-standing career there.
she's a career woman. Back in the 50s, that was
Unheard of.
uncommon. Yeah. It must have felt good to have something worthwhile to focus on. She also had her niece and nephew. Earle did not have any children of her own, so she spoiled Shirley and Orville as much as possible.
I was going to ask you about the children. Since she married so late, it didn't sound like they would have had children of their own.
Right. No, they didn't have any. So she was really close to her niece and nephew. And she had actually been really close to the little niece that had died years ago. She was also.
Yeah, which makes sense because if you don't have children of your own, you probably do spend more time with your nieces and nephews. And yeah, I mean.
Right. And I wonder too if, Corbell and Gaston didn't have very much money. It sounds like they were kind of poor or, modest farmers. And
Right.
she was a career woman. So she probably had a little extra
To
to
share.
spend. Yeah.
Yeah.
On the kids. So when the kids spotted their Aunt Earle coming up the driveway that early May afternoon, they were excited and curious to see what treats she brought them that day.
Oh, yeah.
So that particular day, Aunt Earle brought orange soda. Now, what would your kids do if their favorite aunt brought them orange soda? Would they care?
Well, in this day and time, orange soda, I guess, is,
Yeah, not necessarily a treat
yeah.
because they live off of carbonation.
Yeah.
Kids do. So, but back in the 50s, having orange soda or any kind of, drink like that, it was an actual special occasion. You hear about the soda shops and all that.
Oh, yeah.
On the way in the house with the kids probably jumping up and down with excitement, hanging on her legs, Aunt Earle accidentally dropped one of the soda bottles on the steps. So Corbell cleaned up the broken glass while Earle went to the kitchen and divided up the bottle of orange drink between the two kids, Shirley and Orville. She poured Shirley's drink in a measuring glass, probably whatever she found. And I guess there was a measuring glass there. So she poured that in there. I've done it before.
Yeah. We all
And then,
have.
right. And then gave the rest of the bottle to little Orville. So finally, everybody met in the living room to enjoy their cold drinks and time with Aunt Earle.
Yeah.
But just a few short minutes later, little Shirley started crying. She said she had a stomach ache. And eventually she started throwing up all over her mama's dress.
Oh.
Yeah. Now remember, Corbell and Gaston had already lost a little girl a few years ago from food poisoning. And so they didn't play around when their kids got sick. Corbell, she was already ready right then to take Shirley to the doctor. But Aunt Earle insisted it was just an upset stomach. And taking Shirley to the doctor over a bellyache was just silly. Earle insisted that it would pass, and she was a nurse with over 25 years experience. So Earle tried to ease their worry, and, she wanted to help out.
Right.
So she went to the kitchen and fixed Shirley a glass of Coke to help ease her stomach.
Okay. Which is typical.
Yeah. I mean, I think we usually had Sprite or ginger ale.
Yeah.
But it wasn't working at all. In fact, Shirley got worse. She had these violent bouts of vomiting and stomach cramps, and it got really scary. And finally, her parents insisted that they were taking her to the doctor, and they were taking her right then. Earle still felt like it was overkill, but she ended up going along with them anyway. They ended up at Wetumpka General Hospital, where Earle was a nurse. When they got there, she explained the situation to the doctor, who was her coworker and friend. The doctor was taking it very seriously and asked her why in the world she had let them wait so long to bring Shirley in. Earle stayed with the family until they got her checked in. By this time, she was convulsing, and it was looking so bleak that the doctor was sure that Shirley would not survive.
That is sad.
Yes, it is. So he actually told the parents that even if they brought her in earlier, it didn't look like she was going to be able to be saved. Aunt Earle, at the time, left the hospital to go run an errand. By the time she got back to the hospital, she was told that Shirley was dead.
Oh, wow. That seems fast.
It was, because from what I understand, she came over, went to their house at like 4 something.
Mm-hmm.
And at 8 something is when, I don't have an exact time, but at 8 something is when she was pronounced dead.
Yeah, that was fast.
That was very fast. So, of course, as to be expected, Corbell and Gaston were absolutely devastated.
Yeah. And this had to have seemed like deja vu with their other daughter.
They were, they felt like they were reliving a nightmare.
Oh.
Because their oldest daughter, Polly Ann, suddenly, it said that she was writhing with stomach pains as well. She was vomiting uncontrollably. She too suffered convulsions before eventually dying. And it also happened after being given a treat by Aunt Earle.
Oh, yeah.
2.5 years ago, when Polly Ann suddenly passed away, her parents had not considered an autopsy, but this time they demanded one.
Good for them.
Yes.
Wise parents.
Absolutely. The autopsy was performed at the Wetumpka General Hospital by the state toxicologist, Dr. C.J. Relling. And I guess because she was a nurse and knew the doctors, Earle was able to go in and actually watch the autopsy being performed.
Oh, that's interesting. I bet that couldn't happen today.
No. And why would
she want to?
Why would a relative want to see that? Her coworker said that she acted strange and curious, and she was wringing her hands and asking lots of questions the whole time, wondering, why are y'all performing an autopsy?
I would think that she would understand why.
So she's acting really suspicious.
Yeah.
And as heartbroken as Shirley's dad was, he had the wherewithal the night Shirley died to drive back home. He collected the dress his wife wore that Shirley had vomited on, the towel they'd used to clean up the vomit, the measuring cup Earle had given Shirley to drink her orange drink out of, and the Coca-Cola bottle that she had given her to drink out of.
That was smart on his part, and I'm already rethinking the measuring cup.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yep, keep listening. He put it all into a paper sack and took it over to his brother's house and put it into a room for safekeeping. Just before or during the autopsy, Shirley's dad dropped off this sack of evidence that he's collected, and guess what was found? Arsenic.
And I'm not surprised by that now. That's very unfortunate, and wow.
Yep. Arsenic was found in the vomit on the dress. Arsenic was found in the vomit on the towel. Arsenic was found in the measuring cup, even though it had been rinsed out. And there was arsenic in the Coke bottle. So with Earle watching, Dr. Relling found overwhelming evidence of arsenic poison throughout little Shirley's body.
Wow.
Although her parents were suspicious, and now there was actually evidence of poisoning, why? There just didn't seem to be a motive.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Well, they'd soon find one.
Okay.
Remember that mysterious errand that was so important that Earle left the bedside of her dying niece to go run?
Yeah.
Apparently, she took a 20-minute drive to her insurance agent's house to pay the premium on a life insurance policy she had on Shirley Diane Weldon.
Oh, goodness. You said insurance, and immediately, ding, 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 ding.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, goodness.
There it is. It.
Yep.
It would have been canceled the next day for non-payment. She couldn't let that happen.
The next day. So she was up against time.
She was up against time. So apparently she had Shirley's life insured for $5,500.
What?
And of course, she was the sole beneficiary, and the child's parents were clueless.
Yeah.
$5,500 back then would be about $60,000 today.
Okay, quite a bit.
It blows me away that money is that important
Yeah.
to some people.
And actually, when we were thinking before, like what the motive was, I thought, well, she didn't have children of her own, so maybe she was just kind of jealous. But it wasn't jealousy now. It sounds like something totally different.
Greed. Pure greed.
Yeah.
After those autopsy findings, Shirley's dad swore out a warrant on Earle. And on May 8th, she was arrested for the murder of her niece, Shirley Weldon. Now, the sheriff, Lester Hawley, came to arrest her, and she asked if she could run to her room real quick and get dressed because she was kind of, she was in her nightdress. So he allowed it. When a few minutes passed and she didn't come back out, they went in after her. She was passed out in her bed. She'd taken some kind of sleeping pills, barbiturates, whatever, in a small attempt or, whatever, half-hearted attempt to try to take her own life.
Yeah. I feel like they always do that.
Drama.
Yeah. Every time.
Yeah. So it didn't work. Holly took her into the hospital, pumped her stomach, and she was put into the Julia Tutwiler Women's Prison in Wetumpka.
Good. Yeah.
After her suicide attempt, Holly, the sheriff, questioned Earle for 4 hours in the presence, thankfully, of other witnesses. He said, and I quote, "She was just as cool as anyone could be."
Well, that's chilling.
Yeah. And she confessed to Shirley's murder.
She did?
Yep, she sure did. Yeah, she said, now listen to this. This is a quote of hers. "It didn't cross my mind that they could go into the body and find out that the child was poisoned with arsenic. I wouldn't have given it arsenic if I thought they could find it."
Oh, my goodness.
Can you believe that?
It's like saying, well, if I had known I was going to get caught, I would have chosen another way.
Yes.
That's crazy.
That is cold.
That is cold.
Yep. She said, though, that it was not premeditated and it had been done on impulse, which I feel like right there, she probably knows what she's facing.
She's setting up her
defense.
Yeah, her story to defend herself.
Yes.
Because, how could it not be premeditated when you've just told us about the insurance payment?
Exactly. But she said no, she had just done it on impulse, and she, I don't know. She just, I guess, carried it around with her,
Yeah.
But also she realized that she realized because they started questioning her also about Polly Ann.
Right.
Shirley's sister.
Who had died with the same symptoms.
Yes. And she said she did not kill Polly Ann. Here's probably what had happened. She said that she had accidentally left a salt shaker of arsenic at the Weldon house during one of her visits, and probably Polly Ann got into that.
Because we all carry around salt shakers of arsenic? What in the world?
Right, exactly. But guess who was the sole beneficiary of a life insurance on Polly Ann as well?
Let me guess.
Yes, and they had already exhumed her body by that time. And guess what was found?
Arsenic.
Absolutely. So they also exhumed her husband's body, but surprisingly, no arsenic was found.
Okay. And was there a life insurance policy on him?
There was, and you got to wonder, she's a nurse, and so I don't trust her.
Oh,
she probably killed him.
Yeah. Even if there was no arsenic found, there could have been other ways.
Exactly. Because I think he was like an alcoholic from what I had read. And so I don't think his health was the greatest. I mean, I guess it could have gone either way, but knowing that she had a life insurance policy payout on him as well.
Yeah. It just still leaves it up for question and
oh yeah, definitely. So they had a strong case against her for the murder of Shirley, and they decided not to go after her for the murder of Polly Ann. I just feel like they thought it wasn't necessary. They know that she killed Polly Ann, but they had a very strong case for Shirley and probably didn't want to put her parents through 2 trials.
Right. Probably not. I mean, I can't even imagine what they're going through.
Exactly.
I mean, they trusted this lady that was in their family.
They loved her.
Right. And they trusted her with their children. So that's, I can't even imagine.
I had read several accounts that when they went into the hospital to have, Shirley, that they had left Polly Ann with Aunt Earle.
Oh, so she was like doing child care for her while the baby's being born.
Yes, and that she had given Polly Ann a ice cream cone to celebrate the birth of her little sister. And that is what had the arsenic in it. It was definitely ice cream that had the arsenic in it.
My goodness. I mean, like, how evil is this person?
There's no other word for it.
Yeah.
It's just pure evil. Earle was all set to go to court to face murder charges on August 14th, 1952. They moved pretty quick.
They did back then.
Mm-hmm. The day before court, she smuggled a razor blade into her cell and cut her arm up. There was a ton of blood, but it was all superficial, of course. And it didn't go well for her because they literally had her fixed up with a blood transfusion and ready to go to court the next day.
Oh, the next day. She was not expecting that, I'm sure.
No, she was not. So she was going to face those consequences.
Yeah.
They were not playing with her. Earle did apologize to the matrons, though. She said, "I'm sorry. I must have been out of my mind."
Oh,
No.
Goodness. I think the whole time she's been out of her mind.
What you're going to quickly learn about Aunt Earle is she loves to play the victim.
Okay.
She has no pity for anybody else, obviously, but she pities herself greatly.
Okay. That sounds like some signs of very well
Sociopath.
Yep.
Classic. She's a classic sociopath. Yes. Her trial began on August 15th. And have you seen a picture of her? Let me show you this picture of her so you can kind of describe what you think about her appearance.
Well, she definitely looks gaunt. First of all, the first thing I noticed, you said she was how old?
She's 50.
Okay. So that's right around my age. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, she looks like she's 70 or 80.
She really does.
I mean, I know 50 looked older back then, but she looks a lot older than that. She looks like my grandma. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And very gaunt, which I don't know if she's always been gaunt, but in that picture she is. And she does have this despondent look on her face.
Yes. She looks pitiful. I mean, if you didn't know how evil this woman was, it would be very easy to look at her and feel sorry for her.
Yeah, like, oh, poor Aunt Earle.
Yes.
Until you hear.
You got the wrong woman.
Right.
I mean, yeah. So, but she had admitted her guilt. But of course, her defense claimed, that it wasn't premeditated. They were trying to save her life.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember that statement that she made? Yes, I did it, but it was not premeditated.
Right.
Well, they really played on that. Plus, they played on the fact that she was questioned and interrogated right after that suicide attempt.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were saying that she wasn't in her right mind.
But there were witnesses then, too. I remember you said
there
that.
were witnesses, and she had written it out. I mean, she knew what she was saying.
Yeah. And I don't know how they could prove that it wasn't premeditated, because to me that insurance policy alone shows premeditation.
Of course it does.
Yeah.
And hopefully, well, you'll see. They don't have a dumb jury, thankfully.
Good.
She said that it wasn't premeditated, though, that she used arsenic to kill bugs.
Okay.
So she used it as a bug killer.
So now my question is, did people really in the 50s carry around arsenic in a salt shaker to kill bugs? I mean, is that a real thing?
I don't think so. Now, I do think that they used it in common household, for common household uses.
Yeah.
But I don't think they were carrying it around in their purses for salt shakers.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a lie.
Hard to believe. Yeah.
Yes. And on Saturday, August 16th, 1952, Earle Dennison was convicted of the murder in first degree by an all-male jury, and they had recommended death.
Okay. Which seems, reasonable.
It really does, especially when you go back to the fact that she was there for the suffering of these parents.
Yes.
When they when they lost their first daughter, when she killed, I mean, they didn't just lose her. When Earle killed their first daughter. Yeah. So she had a front row seat to their suffering. And then she came the second time and poisoned their youngest daughter. And she saw, like, when the parents were, they were getting fearful, and when they were like, let's take her to the hospital. No, it's okay. And then she goes in there and fixes her a second glass of Coke.
Right.
What a monster.
Right. That's totally unfeeling. Like, she did not have any sympathy for that suffering. And again, that goes back to that whole sociopath tendency.
Absolutely.
Not that I'm a psychologist or anything.
Oh, yeah. Definitely disclaimer. We're not psychologists. But I just think we are.
Right. And we read a lot on the internet.
Exactly. We'll diagnose you, but,
Oh, I have to say something here. So now I'm wondering, had she not been caught? Orville, did she have insurance on Orville as well?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. She actually did have a life insurance on little Orville as well.
Why am I not surprised? So he very likely would have been next had she not been caught.
Yes, these parents would have been left childless.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Absolutely. So that trial lasted 3 days. The jury deliberated 2 hours and 50 minutes, and
yeah, that's a good indicator. The quicker they come back, I think they say you kind of know that they're going to find them guilty.
Yes, and that's what they did. It's said that she took the news quietly. Now, I heard that her lip quivered, that was the only, kind of
emotional response.
Exactly. And there were 2,500 spectators in court that day.
Okay.
So this trial was a big deal.
Yeah, it was like sensational during that time, I'm sure.
Well, no white woman had ever been put to death in the electric chair in Alabama. And only one black woman, Selena Gilmore, had been electrocuted before her.
Okay.
Now, I don't want to gloss over the fact that, racism in the South was prevalent.
Yeah, this was the early 50s.
Yes. And Alabama was no exception. A sobering fact is that from 1927 to 1976, there were 153 executions, and only 27 of those executions were white.
Okay. So
and
those,
only 3 of those were female.
Okay. So those are kind of some staggering numbers there.
They are. And even, but that kind of goes to show you, like, women were not put to death very often.
I'm sure they were considered not to be violent criminals.
Yes. And typically they weren't really back then. Now, my goodness, we know they'll get down and dirty with the rest of them.
Right.
But back then it was, kind of like this. It was they played the role very well, and
right.
Typically.
And I think I've read before, poison is the weapon of choice for most women.
Yes. And
so maybe that wouldn't have been considered a violent crime until you look at the facts, which you pointed out, her watching the suffering and the writhing and the pain and all of that.
Yes.
To me, that just feels pretty violent.
It is. And I think that everybody agreed that this was violent.
Yes.
She was a child murderer.
Yes.
So, yeah. But she was hoping for mercy, though, from the Supreme Court, because, they just didn't kill women very often back then, and definitely not white women.
Right.
And another white woman in Alabama had been sentenced to death for killing her son, and her sentence was commuted to life in prison.
Okay.
So, of course, every chance she got, Earle complained to the media that her sentence was not fair.
Oh, not fair. Poor Earle.
Yes, exactly. Of course, she planned to appeal, but knowing she was sentenced to death definitely took a toll on her. She lost weight. She went from 131 pounds down to 100.
Okay, I bet that's the picture that I saw where I said she looked gaunt.
Yes, she looked tall and super skinny and frail.
We'll put that picture on the website.
Okay, I definitely will do that. They said that she was nervous. She read the Bible every day. Yeah. That jailhouse religion.
Oh, yes.
She had chores such as cleaning for the matron. They didn't let her cook.
Well, a good call on their part.
Exactly. On September 1st, 1953, she was transferred to Kilby's death cell to prepare to die, basically.
Okay.
A woman guard had to stay in her cell with her 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to make sure she didn't commit suicide. And an armed guard was posted outside of her door all the time.
Okay. Because of those 2 previous attempts.
Right.
So-called attempts.
Right. Now, she did have a chance to appeal to Governor Gordon Pearsons. She literally begged him to have mercy on her and to spare her life. She told him she had plans to work with other women and girls to help them change their lives. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
She believed she could make a difference. I could devote myself to helping others and redeem myself, were her exact words. When she was told her appeal had been denied, she literally passed out.
Oh.
Yeah, of course. The prison matron used ammonia to bring her back around.
Okay.
The governor said, "There is no doubt in my mind of Miss Dennison's guilt. May God rest Miss Dennison's soul. In fact, the fact that she was a white woman made no difference," he said. "The child is just as dead as if the crime had been committed by a man."
That's a good quote. He sounds like a very smart judge, and it sounds like justice will be meted out there.
It feels a little bit uncomfortable that they keep saying white woman, but I do think they keep saying that because a black woman was executed.
Right.
In this case. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and a white woman had not been at that point.
Right. So I just wanted to side note that.
Yeah.
At 5 p.m. on September 4th, 1953, Earle enjoyed her last meal. She had requested fried chicken.
Wonder if that was from Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They had just opened up.
Yeah.
She had a salad, asparagus, mashed potatoes, ice cream, and coffee with cream, and she ate all of it.
Okay. That was her last meal. She was going to make it count.
If I was fixing to die, my stomach would be so tore up. I cannot imagine.
You wouldn't be able to eat.
No. Oh, it makes me like almost nauseous for her.
Yeah.
At 7:30 p.m., she was given a mild sedative to calm her nerves. At 10 p.m., they took her and shaved her head.
That would be scary.
Yes, it would just feel like, oh, this is happening.
Yeah, it would feel permanent.
Yes. She had some time with the prison chaplain, J.E. Franks, and she told him that she held no animosity toward anyone and that her heart was clean.
What does that even mean? I'm wondering, animosity toward who? Toward whom?
Who do you have a right to have any animosity toward, lady?
And hopefully there's been something that made you feel like your heart's clean, but so far it doesn't seem like she's shown any remorse. So, I mean, I don't know. That whole thing is bizarre.
That's forgiveness.
That's a bizarre comment.
It is, but typical.
Yeah.
At 12:02, she was led into the execution chamber and strapped into the electric chair named the Big Yellow Mama.
Ooh, that's creepy.
It is.
That's what they called the electric chair?
Yes, it is. There's lots of stories about Big Yellow Mama.
Oh, goodness.
We'll cover some more of those later on.
Okay.
So with a shaky voice, her final words were, "God has forgiven me for all I have done. Please forgive me for what I did. I forgive everyone."
Okay.
Interesting.
That is interesting. Again, I mean, I hope she did ask for forgiveness, and maybe all those visits with the prison chaplain, maybe she had some remorse and felt true repentance. I don't know. But then that last comment, "I forgive everyone." Like, what does she mean by that?
I'm thinking she means she forgives maybe like the state of Alabama for convicting her and sending her to die.
Maybe she still didn't feel like she deserved that.
She didn't feel like she deserved it. She made that clear.
Okay.
So yeah, and at this point, she seemed resigned to die. I mean, I think she knew it was happening. So the guards strapped her into the chair, took off her glasses, put the big old hood over her head. Oh, that right there, would be terrifying.
That would be.
At 12:07, she was hit with 2,600 volts of electricity. The current entered through her right leg, and she made a gurgling death sound. When it was over, it was said that the room smelled like burnt feathers.
Ooh.
At 12:12 a.m., Earle Dennison, the child killer, was pronounced dead.
Okay.
Yeah. So what a sad, sad ending. Of course, reporters went to Shirley's dad and asked him, how are you feeling? Do you feel like your daughter's had justice? All the questions that reporters ask. And his quote was, "I feel nothing but sorry for Miss Dennison. But at the same time, I have to remember that she did not show any mercy to my little girls."
That's exactly right.
Yes.
And while it is a sad ending, it is fitting. I mean,
right. It's justice.
It is.
Later, Gaston Weldon, Shirley's dad, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against 3 insurance companies, one being National Liberty Life Insurance, on the grounds that Miss Dennison had no insurable interest in his children, and as she was not a parent or legal guardian, and because of these policies, his little girls were murdered. These policies were the motive for the murders, and had it not been for those policies, his daughters would still be alive. The insurance companies appealed to the Alabama Supreme Court, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
But the court affirmed the judgment and ordered the payout to the Weldon family.
Okay. It seems like the courts really got it right in this case all the way around.
They did.
So that's kind of reassuring.
They did. They moved quick. I wonder if, how things would be today if justice were still as swift.
Right. Exactly.
I heard this verse the other day. The verse is 1 Timothy 6:10, and it says, "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs." Look at the end of her life.
Yeah.
Look at what she did to herself. Not only to herself, but look at the lives that she ruined.
All of those around her. That's right.
Yeah.
That speaks volumes.
It does.
That really says, basically, in a nutshell.
Right. And it's not money. People like to say money's the root of all evil. It's not money. It's the love of it.
Right.
And I guess the place that it has in our heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good lesson there.
There, definitely.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us. And we will be back in 2 weeks. And Melody will be sharing a true crime story that happened in...
Right here in North Carolina, where we are at.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Yep. Okay. Thanks for joining us.